The Supreme Court dealt a blow to the Biden administration when it blocked today the federal requirement that employees of large businesses be vaccinated against COVID-19 or undergo weekly testing. The court concluded the Biden administration overstepped its authority by seeking to impose this. More than 80 million people would have been affected. Shaun Naidoo is an attorney at law and has, like so many legal experts, been following these mandates and the Supreme Court ruling today, and the fact that it's gone so far as to reach the Supreme Court justices. Shaun, today's ruling only applies to the federal mandate that the president put in place for large employers. Private employers can keep whatever mandates they have in place, correct?
Yes, and today is a landmark decision, and I think that I've been advising businesses and talking to businesses, since the mandate came out, that we had to wait for this moment today. The Supreme Court is the Supreme Court of the land, and our justice system is based on precedent and on their rulings. It's a big moment for America and for the pandemic.
There were two main pieces to this. One was the piece from OSHA that really applied to large employers of 100 people or more workers. And then there was the other piece about healthcare workers. Now, this only applies to the OSHA part of this.
That's correct. So OSHA, what the ruling said was that they overstepped their authority, and that it should have went through the legislative process when it comes to the businesses, of greater than 100 people. But on the medical side, for anybody taking Medicare or Medicaid, what they said was that, that the mandate was valid for them, and OSHA, that the President Biden didn't overstep his authority there. But one of the good things about that ruling too is that they still kept the medical and the religious exemption, and said that the hospitals have to recognize those. So I think it's a good day for America today. I really do. I finally think we got clarity, and now it's not just the Fifth Circuit or the Sixth Circuit or New York or California. I think that now you have one cohesive body, which is the Supreme Court, that made a good decision.
Okay, you've been in law, practicing law for more than, 20 years. So let me ask you a legal question about this then, as it pertains to healthcare workers. Here in Rochester, we have a lot of healthcare workers. A lot of communities do, but this being home to Mayo Clinic, we're unlike many communities across the country. So we've covered a lot about the fact that they're a private employer and require a vaccine for anybody who works there. Religious exemptions came into play. Some people got them, some people didn't. Those who were not vaccinated didn't get an exemption, lost their jobs, not because they quit. So do they have any legal standing with any of this? Because with this Supreme Court ruling today, it sounds less likely.
So to answer that question, I think yes, the private side, the private employees now have a leg to stand on, when it comes to these mandates, because one thing that the Supreme Court did was they tied everything together, and now we have the Supreme Court who has spoken, and now that they have spoken, it's something that the rest of the courts have to follow. So from a legal standpoint, if we file, like say in Rochester, a case, the Rochester court, if it's in federal court, that is, in Rochester, they have to follow what the Supreme Court of the U.S. is doing. So, it's big on the private side as well.
All right, Shaun, let me get you to hang with me just 2 minutes. I got to take a quick break, and we'll continue our conversation right after that, okay?
Yes, ma'am. Thank you.
Thanks. We'll be right back. We are continuing with our coverage of today's Supreme Court ruling that halts President Biden's vaccine mandate for large businesses of more than 100 employees to mandate a COVID vaccine for workers. Shaun Naidoo is an attorney who has been practicing law for more than 20 years. You've been following the arguments that the Supreme Court took on when the opposition came to this mandate. This really affects the OSHA side of the suit that the justices were listening to. Do you know though, and I had heard that OSHA was being debated on how much reach they had inside workplaces when it came to this mandate. Do you know much about that?
Yeah, and I think that, that was the important part of the ruling. What it said was that, OSHA couldn't overstep their authority, and that the authority, to make this type of decision when it comes to this mandate, that it had to go through the legislative process, and that if they thought that it was such a issue, that's where they should have started with it, and they should have went through that process. And so I think it's a shot. It really says to OSHA, hey, you can't just say what you want to say or do what you want to do, but please follow the rules, which is like go to your Congress and let them pass the law, and that's the way to go about it.
Okay, so as I've been following this case, Shaun, I wanted to ask you, it wasn't a question about whether mandates work to get people vaccinated, but did the federal government, as opposed to states, have the power to actually implement them? So is this then seen, and I'm sure it is, by conservative states as a win?
Absolutely, and it's really, for me, what I've been saying for the last 6 months when it first came out and it's gone through the court system is that this was about democracy and keeping the three branches of government separate, and about their checks and balances. And I think that if you allow, it doesn't matter what the situation is, but if you allow one body or one branch of the government to have all the power, then you kind of take away what we're known as a democracy for. So that's why I think it was important. And like I said, I'm neither for or against the mandate. I'm just for going through the right processes that our democracy has set up, and that's what we should be following.
Well, Shaun, here's where things got hairy, and I know you know this, but this is unprecedented where we're at, not the political side of this, but public health. And so therein comes the argument, the good of overall public health in this country supported these mandates. And so it is not a win for everyone.
Well, the pandemic you're absolutely right. And that's what I told businesses why they, didn't have to make, sudden reactions to, the executive order, is that let it get to the point, because it is a pandemic. We don't have no precedents. The American judicial justice system, or our system, is based on precedents. So you're right. We haven't had a pandemic in 100 years, and nothing of this magnitude. So you don't have anything in the legal, rulings to follow. So now we do. And I think that it'll bring, like I said, cohesion to the states now, because, like you said, each state is so different, whether you're Republican or Democrat, or whether this leader or that leader. And now the Supreme Court has said, hey, this is what you got to follow. And I think everybody's got to come into alignment with that. So that's what I'm excited about. At least now we have something from the highest court of the land giving us, direction on, how to move forward.
Okay, talk about moving forward, and that'll be my final point on this. What is next? There are plenty of people who, like I had just said, are not happy with today's ruling. Is there more fighting on this that we can expect?
Yeah, I think there will be some more fighting, but I think the fighting it'll be a different type of fight. I think that, now when it comes to on the government side, now, you have complete direction. Now on the private side, that's where I think you're going to see the more fighting, and I think will be more on the state by state fight, between private employer and their employees. So yeah, I think there's going to be more to come.
I appreciate your time, your insight. Thank you so very much.